Napoleon Hill insisted that definiteness of purpose is not simply one ingredient of success. It is the foundation upon which every other achievement rests. Without it, a person becomes a drifter, moved by the winds of circumstance, controlled by the demands of others, and pushed through life by obligations instead of being pulled by a vision. Hill observed that most people reach the end of their working years confused about why they never progressed, never accumulated wealth, and never built anything meaningful. The answer, he said, was always the same: they never decided what they truly wanted. A definite purpose requires a person to step back from the noise of everyday life and ask difficult questions. What am I building? What am I striving toward? What do I want my life to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now? Most people avoid these questions because they're uncomfortable. They force you to confront your own lack of direction. So instead, people settle into routine. They wake up, go to work, come home, repeat the cycle for decades, all without designing a future worth living into. Hill explained that a purpose must be more than a wish or a dream. Wishes fade, but a purpose pulls a person forward with the force of desire. It becomes the mental blueprint of your future, a clear picture of what you intend to accomplish and the steps you will take to get there. When a person possesses a definite purpose, their mind stops drifting. Decisions become easier because everything is measured against the vision. Time becomes more valuable because it has direction. Opportunities become clearer because you finally know what you're looking for. Yet the vast majority of people never reach this point. They work because they must, not because they are creating something. They take jobs based on what's available instead of what aligns with their goals. They let fear, habit, or the opinions of others determine their path. And once they settle into this unconscious pattern, years slip by. Before they know it, they are middle-aged, then approaching retirement, still unsure about their purpose, still lacking assets, and still trapped in the constant exchange of time for money. Hill believed that definiteness of purpose is what transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. A person with a clear purpose becomes intentional. They learn skills that align with their goals. They invest time and energy into growth rather than distraction. They develop discipline because the destination matters to them. They attract opportunities and people who resonate with their vision. They refuse to quit because their purpose becomes part of their identity. Without this, hard work becomes a treadmill, constant motion with no progress. A person may be busy for decades yet have little to show for it because their labor was never aligned with a larger aim. Hill said this is why so many reach age 65 exhausted, confused, and financially unprepared. They worked all their lives but never toward anything. Definiteness of purpose is the master key that organizes the mind, directs the emotions, commands the will, and channels action into a meaningful result. Without it, success is accidental and rare. With it, success becomes deliberate and achievable. Napoleon Hill emphasized that one of the greatest financial traps people fall into is relying solely on the exchange of time for money. This model, working hourly, working salaried, or being paid only for direct labor, is the most common way people earn a living, but it is also the most limiting. Hill explained that as long as your income depends entirely on your physical presence, your energy, or the number of hours you can give, you are trapped in a cycle with hard boundaries. Your income stops the moment you stop working. Your earning potential is capped by the hours available in a day. And because everything depends on constant effort, you can never truly break free. Most people spend their entire lives inside this system. They wake up early, commute to work, give their best energy to someone else's goals, then return home too tired to invest in their own dreams. For decades, they repeat this pattern, believing that effort alone will eventually lead to financial security. But Hill pointed out a painful truth says, no matter how hard you work, time-based income cannot create wealth unless it is used to build something that lasts beyond your labor. And assets, on the other hand, work for you. They generate income whether you are working, sleeping, traveling, or spending time with your family. Assets can take many forms of business, investments, intellectual property, real estate systems, or skills that create value independently of your constant presence. Hill taught that the wealthy focus relentlessly on acquiring or building assets that multiply their efforts. They understand leverage, how to get results that exceed the amount of time and energy personally invested. The average person, however, never makes this shift. They are trapped in survival mode, trading time for money, paycheck to paycheck. As expenses rise, they work more hours or take on more responsibilities, but they never step out of the cycle long enough to create something that grows on its own. This is why so many people reach retirement age with little saved. Every dollar earned was tied to labor, and when their labor stopped, so did their income. Hill warned that unless a person deliberately chooses to break free from the time for money model, they will spend their entire life climbing someone else's ladder. They will give their productive years to building someone else's wealth while neglecting their own. And when they finally step away from the workforce, they realize they built no assets, developed no passive income, and created nothing that continues to reward them after their working years. Shifting from trading time to building assets requires a different mindset, one focused on ownership rather than employment. It demands learning, risk-taking, and intentional planning. It requires a person to carve out time, even in small amounts, to begin building something that can eventually grow without their constant effort. Hill insisted that this shift is essential for anyone seeking financial freedom. Without it, people remain stuck in the endless exchange of hours for dollars, working harder each year but never getting ahead. Assets create independence. Time-based labor creates dependence. And Hill's message is clear. The sooner you begin building something that works for you, the sooner you escape the cycle that traps millions into working a lifetime with nothing to show for it. Napoleon Hill taught that fear is the invisible force that silently governs the decisions of most people. Among all the fears he identified, two hold people back more than anything else: fear of failure and a fear of criticism. These fears destroy more dreams, kill more ambitions, and limit more potential than lack of skill, lack of opportunity, or lack of resources ever could. Hill believed that fear is the slave master of the masses, controlling them so thoroughly that they never even attempt to rise above their circumstances. Fear of failure keeps people locked inside their comfort zones. They avoid new challenges because they've been conditioned to believe that mistakes are humiliating rather than instructive. They avoid risk because they were raised in environments where security was valued more than possibility. They choose predictable jobs, predictable routines, predictable outcomes, because uncertainty triggers the deep fear of, what if I fail? Hill argued that this mindset kills innovation, progress, and opportunity. A person who avoids all risk cannot grow. They can only remain where they are. Then there is the fear of criticism, which Hill believed was even more powerful. People are terrified of being judged, rejected, mocked, or misunderstood. They avoid pursuing their dreams not because they lack the ability, but because they fear what others might say. What if people laugh at me? What if my friends think I'm foolish? What if my family doesn't approve? What if I fail publicly? In trying to avoid the discomfort of criticism, people silence their own ambition. They become passive observers of life instead of active creators. Their greatest ideas remain unspoken. Their dreams remain unexplored. Their talents remain undeveloped. Hill noted that society reinforces conformity. People are rewarded for fitting in, not standing out. So the average person learns early to suppress their desires and follow the crowd, even when the crowd is headed toward mediocrity. Fear shapes financial decisions in devastating ways. People avoid investing because they fear loss. They avoid starting a business because they fear uncertainty. They avoid asking for promotions or negotiating higher pay because they fear rejection. They avoid learning new skills because they fear they won't excel immediately. Every one of these fears pushes people into playing small, playing safe, playing invisible. And over time, these choices add up, not in dollars gained, but in opportunities lost. Hill emphasized that every successful person you admire has failed, often publicly and dramatically. They faced criticism, doubt, and ridicule, yet moved forward anyway. What separates them from those who work until age 65 with nothing is not superiority. It is willingness. The willingness to risk discomfort. The willingness to be misunderstood. The willingness to fail forward. The willingness to try again and again until success becomes inevitable. Fear keeps the average person stuck in the same job, the same financial position, the same routine for decades. It convinces them that stability is safer than growth, even though true safety comes from expanding your capabilities, not shrinking your dreams. Hill believed that conquering fear is not a one-time act, but a daily battle. Every time you choose action over fear, your confidence grows. Every time you choose fear over action, your possibilities shrink. Most people work their entire lives without ever taking a single bold step, not because they couldn't, but because the fear of failing or being judged felt bigger than the desire to succeed. Hill's message on this point is clear. Until you learn to silence these fears, you will continue to live a life designed by caution instead of a life designed by intention. Napoleon Hill argued that one of the most tragic truths about modern society is that people are never taught how money actually works. From childhood to adulthood, the average person goes through entire school systems without ever learning how to build wealth, manage money, invest, negotiate, or create financial freedom. Instead, they are taught how to be employees, obedient, punctual, compliant, and dependent on a single source of income. Hill believed this systemic gap in education is one of the biggest reasons people work their whole lives and still end up with nothing. Schools teach algebra, history, grammar, and science, valuable subjects, but none of them explain how to avoid debt, how to acquire assets, how interest works for or against you, how to start a business, or how to multiply money instead of merely earning it. Students graduate knowing how to write essays and memorize facts, yet completely unprepared for real-world financial decisions. Without financial literacy, people make predictable, costly mistakes. They overspend, undersave, avoid investing, accumulate debt, and rely entirely on a paycheck instead of building wealth. Hill emphasized that the wealthy and the financially secure think differently because they have learned principles that the average person never encounters. They understand the power of compounding. They know how to evaluate opportunities. They know the difference between liabilities and assets. They understand how to use money strategically instead of emotionally. They treat money as a tool, not something to fear or worship. This mindset is the result of education, self-education, not formal schooling. The average person, on the other hand, learns about money through trial and error, often repeating the same mistakes their parents made. They grow up in households where money is a source of stress, scarcity, or silence. They inherit beliefs like, money is hard to get, be grateful for what you have, don't take risks, or a good job is all you need. These beliefs create generations of people who work endlessly but never break out of financial dependence. Hill explained that financial ignorance keeps people trapped in a cycle. They take on loans without understanding interest. They use credit cards without understanding consequences. They save money in low-interest accounts instead of investing. They buy things that depreciate instead of assets that appreciate, even when opportunities appear, like starting a small business, investing in real estate, learning a high-income skill. They feel intimidated because they lack the knowledge to evaluate the risks. So they choose inaction, believing it is safer, when in reality, ignorance is the greatest risk of all. Hill stressed that wealth is not reserved for the lucky or the gifted. It is reserved for the informed. The people who take time to study money, how it grows, how it is protected, and how it is multiplied, are the ones who rise above financial struggle. Meanwhile, those who avoid financial education trust the wrong things: job security, pensions, government programs, or the hope that someone else will manage their future for them. When these systems fail, they have nothing to fall back on. Financial literacy empowers a person to take control of their destiny. It teaches them how to convert income into assets, how to create multiple streams of income, how to leverage their time, and how to make money work for them instead of depending solely on their labor. Hill believed that financial education is not optional. It is essential. Without it, even the hardest working people will remain trapped in survival, unable to escape the cycle that leads so many to reach retirement age with no savings, no investments, and no financial independence. Lack of financial education is not a personal flaw, it is a societal failure. But Hill taught that anyone at any age can break free from this limitation by choosing to learn what school never taught and what most people never seek to understand. Napoleon Hill believed that one of the most common reasons people fail to achieve financial independence is because they follow the masses without questioning where the masses are going. He observed that most people are not living by their own judgment, their own goals, or their own thinking. They are living according to habits inherited from society, traditions, and the behavior patterns of the people around them. Hill warned that the crowd is almost always headed toward mediocrity, and anyone who blindly follows it will inevitably arrive at the same destination. From an early age, people are conditioned to think in groups. They are encouraged to fit in, not stand out, comply, not question, follow instructions, not challenge assumptions. This conditioning continues into adulthood, where the majority simply adopt the financial habits they see, working a job until retirement, spending more as they earn more, relying on one income stream, avoiding risk, and hoping that life will somehow work out. These habits are comfortable, familiar, and devastatingly ineffective. Hill pointed out that following the crowd feels safe because it protects people from judgment, criticism, and responsibility. If you do what everyone else is doing, you never have to explain yourself. You never have to defend your choices. You never have to take ownership of the outcome. If things go wrong, you can say, well, everyone else did the same thing. This creates a psychological safety net that keeps people trapped in average thinking. But the crowd is not a guide. It is a warning. The majority of people do not become wealthy. The majority do not create businesses. The majority do not develop high-value skills. The majority do not invest early or strategically. And the majority reach the end of their lives wishing they had taken more chances, more risks, more bold steps toward the life they wanted. Hill understood that if you follow the crowd, you inherit the crowd's results. Independent thinking requires courage. It means you must question what others accept without thought. You must evaluate your financial choices intentionally rather than copying what you see. You must be willing to pursue paths that most people avoid, studying money building assets, taking calculated risks, developing your mind, and choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. Hill insisted that every wealthy and successful person he interviewed became financially independent because they refused to follow the crowd. They dared to ask, is this what I really want? Is this path leading me to freedom or dependency? Is there a better way? The crowd spends money emotionally. Independent thinkers spend strategically. The crowd fears risk. Independent thinkers study it. The crowd seeks comfort. Independent thinkers seek growth. The crowd works for money. Independent thinkers make money work for them. Hill observed that most people become so absorbed in their daily routines, work, bills, consumption, that they never lift their heads to see whether the path they're on aligns with their goals. By the time they realize it doesn't, decades have passed. They did what everyone else did, so they arrived where everyone else arrives at retirement age with little savings, few assets, and limited options. Breaking away from the crowd does not mean rejecting society. It means rejecting unexamined thinking. It means taking responsibility for your financial and personal growth. It means choosing to live by design, not by default. And Hill believed that only those who think independently ever discover the opportunities that lead to true wealth, freedom, and fulfillment. Napoleon Hill taught that as persistence and self-discipline are the twin pillars of lasting successes, yet they are also the qualities most people struggle to maintain. He believed that almost every failure in life can be traced back to a lack of these two traits. People start strong but finish weak. They set goals but abandon them at the first difficulty. They make plans but do not follow through. In the long run, it is not lack of opportunity, intelligence, or resources that holds them back. It is lack of consistency. Hill explained that persistence is the ability to keep moving toward a goal even when motivation fades, when obstacles appear, when progress is slow, and when no one is watching. Most people rely on bursts of motivation, short-lived emotional highs that fade quickly. But persistence is different. It is rooted not in excitement but in commitment. It is the refusal to quit even when quitting feels easier, safer, or more convenient. Persistent people keep trying, adjusting, learning, and moving forward, no matter how long the journey takes. Self-discipline, on the other hand, is the power to control one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. Hill believed that all achievement begins with mastering the mind. Without self-discipline, a person becomes controlled by impulses, distractions, moods, and habits that sabotage progress. They procrastinate, overindulge, avoid discomfort, and chase short-term pleasure instead of long-term growth. Self-discipline is the ability to do what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. Hill emphasized that both persistence and self-discipline are muscles that must be exercised. They do not appear magically. They are developed through repeated action. The problem is that most people never train these muscles. They want success without struggle, growth without effort, reward without sacrifice. As soon as challenges arise, they retreat. As soon as results are not immediate, they lose interest. They confuse temporary discomfort with permanent defeat. This lack of persistence shows up in countless areas of life. People start saving money but stop when an unexpected expense appears. They begin investing but panic at the first sign of market instability. They launch a business but abandon it after the first setback. They learn a new skill but give up when the learning curve becomes difficult. They change habits for a week, then revert to old patterns as soon as willpower fades. Hill believed that this tendency to quit early is one of the main reasons people work their entire lives with little to show for it. Wealth, success, mastery, these are rewards for long-term commitment, not short-term enthusiasm. The world rewards the person who keeps going long after the average person has stopped. Self-discipline also plays a crucial role in financial behavior. Without it, people overspend, accumulate debt, and prioritize instant gratification. They buy what they want in the moment instead of building what they want in the future. Hill explained that discipline allows a person to redirect their efforts from consumption to creation, from comfort to growth, from impulse to intention. But discipline is uncomfortable, and because most people avoid discomfort, they avoid the very habits that could change their lives. Hill observed that every highly successful individual he interviewed possessed an unwavering persistence that bordered on obsession. They pursued their goals tirelessly, often through years of hardship, criticism, failure, and uncertainty. They practiced self-discipline daily, reading, learning, planning, refining their skills, delaying gratification, and staying focused on their vision. Over time, their persistence compounded, creating results that looked like luck to the outside world, but were actually the outcome of disciplined effort. Most people give up long before they reach the point where success begins to accelerate. They experience frustration and assume they are failing, not realizing that frustration is simply part of the process. Hill believed that if people understood how close they often are to breakthroughs, they would persist longer, work smarter, and trust the process instead of abandoning it. Persistence converts temporary defeat into eventual victory. Self-discipline converts intention into action. Together, they transform ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. Hill concluded that without these two qualities, even the best goals, plans, and opportunities fall apart, because the person pursuing them cannot sustain the effort required to turn them into